Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. For you sports fans out there, this coronavirus situation has thrown a monkey wrench into everything sports, from the Buffalo Bills to the Buffalo Sabres to golfing, bowling. By the way, we have a bowling show. It's called Beat the Champ. And that bowling show, although we haven't been able to give you new bowling shows lately, we still bring you Beat the Champ. And we've got some interesting plans coming forward for the next few Beat the Champs. They're very, very exciting. And we have one of the co-hosts of Beat the Champ with us right now to talk about that program and all of the things that are going on in Buffalo sports. And I want to welcome Paul Peck to the show, our host for Beat the Champ, one of our co-hosts. And Paul, it's an unusual time, and Beat the Champ has been on kind of a hiatus for a while for obvious reasons, but it's not gone altogether. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with Beat the Champ now.
Yeah, the guys had a great idea to go back and rerun. We've had 5 300 games, Phil, through the almost into our 5th year now on the show, and those are just cool moments. No matter where you are or what it is, if you have the chance to see somebody bowl a 300 game, that excitement and anticipation in the 10th frame is always pretty cool. So we're going to relive those 5 300 games and let everybody go back and see those cool moments that we've had so far on the show.
I love it. Cut to the most exciting part. It's like cutting to a hole-in-one or a touchdown or a goal. I mean, you just get to see the best of the best. That's exciting. That's very good. That'll be fun.
I'm almost a little surprised we've only had 5. I know they're hard to do, but we have such high-level bowlers that maybe I thought we might have more than that. Maybe that just tells you how hard it is to do, and no matter how good the bowlers are, and we've clearly gotten some of the best in Western New York on our show, it's not easy to do.
Well, it's interesting. It's been a long time since I've done much bowling and been in a league, and in watching the show, I tend to find out things that I hadn't known before. When you get to that level of bowling, they get into the fine details, like, certain lanes are maybe oiled a little differently, and the spin is a little bit, it grabs a little bit better or it doesn't, and just from one lane to the next, you could see a marked difference with the same bowler, and they have to really adapt during the game. They have to figure out what's going on.
It's the one thing I've learned the most about that I didn't understand about bowling, and most of this I have learned from Sue Navoyski, is bowling is so much of a mental game. Maybe more so than a physical game, which you on the surface you might not think, but the great bowlers have the ability to make those adjustments. And as you said, Phil, it's lane to lane different. It's change a ball, when to change the ball, when to move one spot to the left, one spot to the right. And I think the other thing that we've seen emerge on the show is very indicative of great athletes at all levels, is you have to forget what happened before and tune out what may be happening around you. A missed spare, forget it. Move on to the next one. The guy next to you is running 3 or 4 strikes in a row. You got to lock it out. You got to focus on your own game. I've been incredibly impressed at how much of a mental game bowling really is. And that's, I think, why you've seen a little separation from the really high level guys we've had on the show, is they're so much better at the mental part of it.
During this kind of a situation that we're going through, how do athletes keep up with their trade, their skills? I mean, you can't practice, you can't get the coaching. What are they doing now?
It's interesting across all sports, and I've had a chance to, in particular, talk to a lot of the athletes at UB as how do you prepare? And for football players, it's a lot of running, it's lifting, it's obviously there's no actual football really going on other than maybe a quarterback throwing a ball to a teammate or something. And, in a lot of sports, how are the hockey guys keeping their skills up? Obviously the bowlers can't get into the bowling centers. It'll be very interesting when we start to get back to normal to see how long it's going to take some of these athletes to get back to their peak level of performance, because it's like anything else, unless that's why they practice so much. That's why they spend so many hours doing it. And if you take that away, that's very unusual. Most of the high level athletes never slow down very much. Even good bowlers in the summer are still doing some bowling. It'd be very interesting to watch and see what kind of effect that has.
Yeah, it's like there's three elements to it. I mean, there's the physical conditioning, then the motivation to keep that physical conditioning, because if a coach isn't looking over your shoulder saying, you know, do 50 or run around this much, you have to be self-motivated. Now at the professional level, and at some of the levels we're talking about, in the college levels, that motivation is a little bit easier to come by because you're really serious and you're into it. But the third part of it is the skill level. In the skill level, you really have to be doing the actual routines and exercises in order to keep your skill level up. Like we were just saying, I mean, there's really no substitute for that. You can keep in condition, but the skill level is going to drop off. Do you think in the upcoming seasons, assuming that we get back to normal, or the new normal, if we will, is that going to affect the quality of play on the college level or on the professional level when it comes to football or basketball?
I can't imagine that it won't, Phil. I mean, it may be a bit of a ramping up process. I mean, I know, football is saying, they need 6 weeks roughly to get back before they play. And that might be enough time, but it might not. Those, assuming that the Bills go to training camp sometime in August and start in September like they normally would, maybe those first couple of games are a little more ragged than they normally would be, because there hasn't been that off-season training. I think, as we come out of the draft this past weekend, I wouldn't expect a lot from a lot of the rookie players, because they're going to miss a lot of that off-season conditioning, a lot of that off-season learning, a lot of those off-season matchups to adjust to the speed of the game. They're not going to get that. So as a Bills fan or any NFL fan, I wouldn't put a lot of high hopes on a whole lot of contributions from the rookie class because of the situations that we're in. I think you even saw that a little bit years ago in the NFL when they had the labor stoppage and they didn't have the offseason. I thought you saw a little marked difference in the play.
Yeah, this has been, the most unusual draft in quite a while. And, with the technology, the way they conducted the draft, and then the scouting that had to be at a distance before the draft, do you think it affected the way that they did it and the judgment, as to who they chose and so on? I'm wondering whether it would have been the same people drafted in the same way, in the same positions, had this all been normal instead of the way we went through it.
I don't think so, Phil. I think what you saw was much more reliance on production and track record for players to be chosen. And honestly, the NFL draft tends to be more about potential and athletic ability and sometimes less about production. So it probably benefited some players who didn't have all those meetings and all those testings and all that discussion where they said, okay, pop the tape it from last fall and tell me if the guy can play or not. And a lot of decisions were based on that. And some NFL people will tell you that's a better way to do it anyway, that sometimes all of this thought, discussion, analysis, statistics, testing results gets in the way of whether guys are good players or not. And, I think you saw the Bills take a lot of guys with a lot of production, maybe not guys that are going to be superstars based on potential and athletic ability, but guys that are going to be really good, solid players. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what people have to understand is sometimes that's not always what the draft is about, particularly in the early rounds. It's more about athletic ability, speed, size, and can that guy be a star? And the guys who tend to be really good, middle of the road, solid players sometimes get pushed down. Maybe that changed this year.
Well, staying with the NFL, assuming that we get back to kind of a normal routine when the fall comes around and the NFL season is about to start, do you think that the league is worried about how attendance is going to be affected because of what we're going through now with, and people are going to be worried about social distancing or being crowded into the seat next to somebody in the stadium? Do you think that's going to affect attendance?
I think it has to, and I would suspect that all the leagues are worried about it. I mean, let's be honest with you, putting 72,000 people in New Era Field right now is exactly the polar opposite of everything that we're living in our lives right now. Are we going to be ready to get back to that in a matter of months? I don't know. I mean, are there going to be professional games played in empty arenas? Possibly. What happens to football? Are you going to play it without fans? Are you going to play it with maybe 30% of the people in each section that normally are there, separated by a row, separated by 3 seats, which might mean a third or 2/3 of the attendance? The other question I have is, even if everybody says, okay, let's go back to normal, Bills versus Patriots season opener on the second weekend in September, are all those people that normally would be there be willing to be back there? Whether the officials tell us we can or not, there's got to be a certain amount of our population and sports fans are going to say, I'm not quite ready for that yet. I'll sit at home and watch this game. So now how does that affect everything? I mean, we're all guessing right now what this is all going to look like, because frankly, none of us know. But I would suspect it's going to be different in a lot of ways. Instead of in addition to a metal detector, will you walk through a temperature detector when you walk into New Era Field? And will they say your temperature's high, you can't come to the game? I don't know. None of us know, but I would suspect it's going to be somehow different this season, if there is a season and if it starts on time, than it's ever been before. And where that goes in the future, I just don't know.
Okay, Paul, hold that thought. We're out of time on this segment. We're going to come back right after this and talk more sports with Paul Peck.